Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're here for part two of the discussion of the defense against the Commanders and into some individual discussions in this episode. Joining me to do that is Brandon Croxton. Brandon, how you doing?
I'm good, Ken. Always good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to talk to you too, my friend. And we had a good part one, talked a lot about the pass rush, some things are going on there, some of the point of entry information and what that might mean. Brandon had some good comments about missed tackles and how they might be more likely to occur on players who aren't used to playing defense together that I think are really worth listening to. So if you haven't downloaded that, go take a download, take a listen to that. Make sure you hear the first part of this episode. But Brandon, let's jump right in and talk about some individual players. I'd like to start on the defensive line, but who's a player you want to talk about?
Well, I think I'd love to start talking about the star. I think we might be watching a star in the making with Travis Jones. He was just absolutely unblockable again this week, and it's especially impressive considering he played most of the first half, and this was against the Commanders' starting guards and interior linemen, and he just dominated the game. They couldn't block him. I mean, he had a sack. It was the sack was kind of a cleanup sack, but um, he was constantly double teamed. One double team on the first and goal. He was getting double teamed, and he still manages to stop Robinson and stop him cold for a 2 yard gain. And yeah, really impressive. Like he drew a holding penalty in the next drive, and if you saw that play, like the guard was holding on for dear life. This wasn't just a tug of the jersey. This was like I'm wrapping him up, and there's nothing I can do with this man. And the way he's playing, any short arm guard is going to have real trouble stopping him because he can when he stretches out his arm, he just has so much power with his arms stretched out that he can knock guards back. And if you have a short arm guard, he's going to have a lot of trouble.
Now, not every defensive lineman can do this because it takes an enormous amount of strength in your shoulder and arm.
Yeah.
But the old thing you tell you on the defensive line is one arm's longer than two, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
if you hold him off at one arm, he can't really block you back or manage your movement nearly as easily. What I've seen from Travis Jones that I've really loved in this preseason is he seems to be very comfortable going directly in, and you variety of moves. So that's been good as well. He's violent with his hands, but when he goes directly into the opposing guard with his shoulder, that makes his rip move just about unstoppable if he can get his arm underneath the opposing offensive lineman. And for those who don't know what a rip move is, do you want to explain it, Brandon?
Yeah, it's basically you get your arm underneath the offensive lineman's arm and you rip up to get the offensive lineman's arms off of you. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things you just can't afford to have happen. You want to maintain your control. You want to have contact. You want to be physical as an offensive lineman, but you can't afford to have the defensive lineman also get his arms under you, or it's usually that's a chance for a very bad rep. And it can just create a penetration advantage, but oftentimes it'll mean you're off balance as well with your arms up in the air, which we've seen from some of the Philadelphia linemen. I thought in particular last week, maybe a little bit less this week, but Travis Jones looks like he may be really benefiting a lot from what Chuck Smith is bringing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got so much power, and he moves really well as well. He's got good feet and everything. So, I mean, he's going to be a load. I think him and the nose tackle Pierce.
Mhm.
I think playing them at 1 and 3 is gonna be a really big role, for for run stopping purposes. And then I think if you could put him at the 1 and have Matabike at the 3 and have them run games, and
Mhm.
if Travis Jones is taking on double teams, you're putting Matabike 1-on-1. You're getting your outside pass rushers in 1-on-1 situations and let them beat. Like I think he's gonna be a really key cog to the success of all the pass rushers if he can keep up the way he's playing so far.
Yeah, completely agree. By the way, on the 1-3 concept is something I asked Weaver about at camp the last time he was at the podium. Do you envision some of that this year? We saw Michael Pierce and Brandon Williams do it when Michael Pierce first came into the league, and this is it's Michael Pierce in both cases playing at the nose tackle, so it's Brandon Williams versus Travis Jones playing at the 3 tech, and Travis Jones is a more athletic pass rusher than Brandon Williams was. At least that's my take on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it certainly gives you much more dynamic hand play and violence there that's potentially very effective. But the other thing you mentioned is even if you play him at the nose, you can still scheme as McDonald to get him one-on-one matchups by playing other games. So you have the 3 tech crash into the center. So it may transfer that double team, or at least the attention of that center,
hmm
from 1 to 3, from the 1 to the 3,
that's right.
and then you
Yeah,
get a benefit that way. If you've got a double team and Travis Jones is actively trying to get between it, which that was Pernell McPhee's game, he was terrific at that. And then you run any kind of a game through the gap on the other side of, one away from where Jones is crashing, then you have a chance to peel a blocker off him that way, and you create a one-on-one matchup where, if you're diving to the middle of a double team, it's usually a 45-degree angle, or can be, from 2 consecutive offensive linemen, that is severely disadvantaged for any one of them individually.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You, I'm not saying that he is going to be as good or is as good as Haloti Nada was in his prime, but Terrell Suggs always talks about how when he won Defensive Player of the Year, Nada was really the key for him winning the Player of the Year, and it. I think Travis Jones can have a similar positive impact with these pass rushers being able to, you know, maybe run games, tackle in games, tackle twists, things like that, but also just taking on blockers inside because the offensive lines work from the inside out, so he can hopefully generate a lot of pressure on the inside and get Oway in that speed going on the outside.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It definitely, a lot of that is driven from the inside. That when the Ravens had their big sack year in 2014, so that was the year they had 56. Yeah, they had 60 in 2000. Yeah, I may be forgetting. They had 61 year and 56 the other, but it's 2006 and 2014 are the 2 big sack years the Ravens have had. I think it was 2014 they had 56. And Doomerville and Suggs were getting a lot of the credit for the edge, but Pernell McPhee was the double team master on the inside, and he really drove that pass rush in a lot of ways, as you're describing Nada doing it in 2011 for Suggs. And um, it would just be, he is one of the real potential for upside surprise from the Ravens. A lot of the guys, they have a lot of veteran core players. I don't think we're going to get some enormous upside surprise from Roquan because expectations are so high.
Yeah.
I don't think we get it from Williams because everybody already expects his per snap productivity to continue from last year to this, we can lock up the Defensive Player of the Year trophy right away for him if that happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you go through the guys who are really cornerstone players. Marlon Humphrey, I think it's much more likely we get a negative surprise due to injury than we get a positive surprise due to him establishing some new level of play. So you really got to find who are those guys who are not making a lot of money, who are earlier on in their career who might step up. And Travis Jones is the guy on this defense. Maybe Hamilton.
Hamilton
you could see
too.
yeah.
I would say yeah. Mm-hmm.
How
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
Oweh as a third?
always a potential too. Yeah.
Mhm.
You keep hearing good things about him in camp, and you just hope, the pass rush is there, and he finally kind of masters getting off the ball and using all of that athleticism that he has because he, he's such a better athlete than you know every offensive lineman that will ever face. But I mean,
Yes.
he's more athletic than probably 90% of just general outside linebackers with all that speed. So he just needs to figure out how to harness it a little bit. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about a different defensive lineman. Brent Urban played only in the early part of this game, and obviously they had some guys sitting. Matabike did not see the field, neither did Pierce, but and neither did Washington for that matter. So three guys completely sat out of this game, but they
Mhm.
did put Brent Urban on the field, who's arguably their number 5 defensive lineman. Is he 5 or 6? Let me think about that for a second, because Pierce is in there for sure as 4. I think he's 5 and Blackson is
Yeah.
6, right?
Right. Hmm.
Yeah, that's what you
Yeah.
said.
That's what I was
So
thinking. Yeah.
Urban looked pretty good. He retired after 3 drives. He was in there making the tackle on the very first 3 plays of the game. And
Hmm.
that included a really nice takedown of Robinson on an ankle tackle on that 3rd down screen pass where
Hmm.
the ball floated over him and he recovered. And it looked like that was going to be a big play. It looked like there was room in space for Robinson to make 20 yards, potentially. And he took
Hmm.
him down by the ankles, and it was a first down, but it was only a 3-yard first down on 3rd and 3 instead of a 20-yard first down on 3rd and 3.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the very first play, they ran right at him, and he held the edge well and tackled him for like a 1 yard gain. So yeah, Urban looked he was very good against the run out there. Yeah.
I have a feeling at some point we're going to wake up some August and realize Urban isn't the player he once was, but he still is a very effective defensive lineman at denying space. And so I've been enjoying watching him do that and get the job done. I thought he made a really nice play. If you want to look at it, Q2 244, where he did a really nice job of really denying 2 gaps at the same time, even while he wasn't playing straight up against the defender. He was having to kind of crash down to deny space to the inside and still denied the A and B gap at the same time, which was pretty impressive. And then there was a posse of 3 different players who came in to shut down the edge together. And of course, like a lot of the football on Monday night, 2 of them missed the tackle and the 3rd one finally cleaned up.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Through his whole career, he's been a solid run
Mm-hmm.
defender his entire time, and like that skill that he has can probably keep him in the league another 2 maybe 3 years. And he's got the height so he can knock down passes on play actions and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, being able to just be a solid run defender, it seems like the Ravens value that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of sad that probably for him that in football the 5 tech is kind of going away because teams play so much 11, forces the nickel, forces you down to 2 defensive linemen under the most traditional way to respond to it. I know you can play the jumbo nickel and play still 3 defensive linemen with a nickel and only 1 inside linebacker. That's not the
Hmm.
usual way to do it. So it's an unfortunate fact of life that not every team wants to run the ball like the Baltimore Ravens used to, and you can play a 5 tech almost every play against them. Most teams in the NFL, there are more limited opportunities.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
All right, who's your guy?
All right. Rashad Nichols. I thought he had a pretty active game. He did a nice job at flushing out Howell on a pass rush and then assisting with the sack in the first quarter. Travis
Mhm.
Jones got yeah the main credit. I think yeah Nichols should be lobbying for maybe a half a sack. Go to the statistician or something. Get him a half sack here or there. But yeah, he played well. And like on the forced fumble, he was the first one to kind of rip at the ball of the running back, and Ham eventually got it out completely. But he's I think he started to pry it. He was working on prying it loose a little bit before Ham finally got it out. So you, you he could potentially be, that seventh, eighth defensive lineman that's, on the practice squad that gets an elevation for an injury here or there, or um, comes comes through to, you know help them in that situation. Just be maybe a solid backup.
Yeah, so Nichols still he's a one as opposed to an R, meaning he's been in NFL camp, he's been on an NFL practice squad, but he's never accrued a year of service that would start the sand running through the hourglass, as I like to say, and reduce his option value, frankly, to the team. And
Hmm.
you want to have players who have 4 years of, if it was college, we'd call it eligibility, but 4 years of team control at the NFL level that you still
Hmm.
have as cheap possibilities. And Nichols, certainly that possibility. I agree with you. He had the initial pressure on the sack. I thought that was good. He also missed a couple tackles, which was not good. But he was one of many that was in that position in this game. And I am having trouble remembering if either of these ended up being a big play, but Q2 448 and Q3 523 are the two missed tackles I got him for. Um, did do a good job. Had a pressure against Charles that got negated by a defensive pass interference. So that's number 77, the same guy that Jones, I think, got two for at least one. So a decent day for Nichols. I don't think he moved the needle on moving past either Blackson or Urban in this preseason. I think he's fairly surely going to be sent to the practice squad, and it may mean, honestly, at this point, that he's lost to the Ravens at some juncture, because the um, replacement level is a moving target. It goes down as the season progresses. So your pool of available defensive linemen becomes smaller and smaller. And pretty soon,
Hmm.
Rashad Nichols, who's at the top of somebody's practice squad, and in fact, the Ravens practice squad, which is prime poaching territory. It's like
Hmm.
if you want to go poach elephants, you go to Zambia, or you go to you know South Africa, wherever elephants are. But
Hmm.
you don't you don't go to a team that's not known for developing defensive linemen, or not known for coaching them well, if you want a defensive lineman.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
All right, is my turn or yours? Did you go with
It's
Nichols?
Yeah, I went with Nichols. Yep.
All
Your
right.
turn.
We don't need to talk about every single guy here, but I'm going to talk about Kaim Caesar, who came on in the second half and made a little bit of a contribution. And those guys were really, really tired by the end of the game, having played all these snaps. We mentioned in the first show, 81 to 49 in snaps. That doesn't even really tell the whole story, because the drives were chunky. So if they're playing a 15 snap drive, then it's really a lot more compressed, reduced oxygen time for these big
Hmm.
men that have a lot of trouble with this. And Kaim Caesar was in there, and he made a couple plays in the second half. One, I believe, a QH, and the other a pass defense, which were at least some interior pass rush contribution. I believe in the entire second half, that's all the pass rush contribution they got, pressure or anything, any sort of pressure event from any defensive lineman. So that was something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And he did nice. Like he didn't get penetration on the pass rush, but he read the quarterback's eyes and got his arms up and knocked down the pass. So that was good. That's always a good play. And yeah, he also stands out to me because he's a number 60 on the defensive line. I'm like, who? And I always look, who's that offensive lineman on the D line?
Is this a two-way player of ours? Yes.
Yeah.
It is a weird number, but we're seeing a few more 60s. The team that seems to have a lot of oddball numbers, and by the way, this is becoming more and more prevalent with players getting to choose numbers under 10 and all this other stuff that's going on. But also the teams that have a lot of either retired numbers or numbers they really don't want to give out, even though they're kind of legacy numbers that they only want going to a great player.
Hmm.
Like the Packers, I think, has some of that going on. But anyway, now we've got Jadeveon Clowney coming in and deciding he wants to wear number 24 for the Ravens as a outside linebacker.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know
It's
that was legal, but apparently it is.
yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Like you know, we're so used to certain positions being in a certain number group. It's going to take a while to see all these new numbers all over the place. Yeah. Mhm.
All right, let's move on and talk about some outside linebacker play in this game because I think there were some interesting things going on. But lead us off again with the outside linebacker you want to talk about.
Sure. So I talk about Jeremiah Moon. He had a sack. He went unblocked. It was a simulated pressure, and the offensive line got confused, and he went in untouched and uh, got the sack. It would have been a great play if was able to get the ball out on that, but just getting him down on the ground and getting a sack is obviously a good play. Um, but another thing, uh, he also had another rush where he got pressure but couldn't quite get the get Fromm down on a
Mm-hmm.
pressure. But what he had a heck of a block on uh, Keaton Mitchell's kick return. He had a decleater block in the third quarter, and I saw that block and I saw that play, and I was like, those are the type of plays that get you on the roster when when the odds are against you because it, it was a heck of a block. It enabled Mitchell to get a few more yards on his return, and yeah, those are the plays when when you're low on the totem pole that can get you onto the roster.
Seems like Moon has also been around for quite some time. Like Nichols, he's a one. He's not an R, but he's a one, and so he'd be hanging around for
Mhm.
4 years potentially if the Ravens, find gold uh, with him. I liked what he did. I thought, interestingly enough, that the unblocked play you're talking about, he rushed off the offensive left side, so he's outside the
Mhm.
left tackle blocked inside on that play. What happened, as far as I saw it, as I recall it, let's put it that way, is Simpson lined up almost directly behind Moon.
Yeah.
And the guard took the defensive tackle. And I think the Ravens may have instigated that. And meaning
Mhm.
they try to cross the face of that guard. And then the Simpson kind of ran into that B gap. And the rule is, of course, as an offensive
Yeah.
lineman, you take the inside guy.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I think Simpson ended up dropping back on that play, which left Moon completely uncovered and the tackle just wasn't able to get over fast enough. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't
Was
even
it
see that he
or
did
is
that.
it
I thought he was in there, but it doesn't matter. It
okay?
got Moon clear of Lucas. Cornelius Lucas
Right.
was the guy
Hmm.
to make that sack. Anyway, it's nice to see that, and I don't know who to credit the most for that, but I think the positioning on that play is probably McDonald and how they scheme that up to confuse. But you mentioned a failure on the offensive line. Is that they should have identified the mic differently? The middle of their protection had to be differently identified in order to recognize what was going on with Simpson? Or how would they call that on the offensive line?
Um, I'm not sure. Like, I think because it did look like Simpson was rushing in, so the offensive tackle just took him instead of and let Moon go. Um, I think you just credit that to a good defensive call and good disguise by the Ravens. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. So you brought up Jeremiah Moon. I'll talk about David Ajabo. I
Uh-huh.
played the first two drives. It was only 15 snaps. He did have a drive-ending bull rush pressure against Lucas. That was a Q1 404. He
Hmm.
was not on the defensive stat sheet otherwise, but I will say this, that he also didn't lose containment on that edge the way he did 3 times the previous week. So it was nice to see him kind of clean up his game on a little bit. But there's a balance he needs to strike, which gives him a more violent, hand based pass rush, probably also kind of move based, because he really is a double move kind of guy and an athlete, who wants to make that tackle overreact. But he's got to have something that can optimize both, still holding on to that edge and getting a little better pass rush than he did in this game. So it wasn't a terrible game. It wasn't the worst, by any stretch I've seen. I want to see a better spot on the efficient frontier of rushing the passer and maintaining the edge.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, he's you know he's still young. I think, you know, maybe maybe we should temper expectations about him being a, 10, 12 sack guy. I'm not sure. He's got to learn, and he's, you know, he's still developing his pass moves, even though he's adjusting to the NFL level, I'd say. Yeah.
All right, your turn. Who do you want to talk about? Anybody else at outside linebacker?
Sure.
Uh,
So let me see here. Tavius Robinson. I'd really just say he was pretty quiet all day. He had a decent rush to flush out Brissett on a pass play, but other than that, he was just pretty quiet. He's he looks like he needs time to develop. He's a little stiff in the hips, and he's a little uh he doesn't have that pass rush plan yet, and it's something you can see. He's not really ready to play a lot of snaps this first year.
Now, my recollection of Tavius Robinson is he's an older player, and I actually have to look this up because I don't remember what his actual birthday is. Maybe I have it on this sheet. Yeah, I have his age on here, and he's 24 years old already. I don't have his
Mhm.
birthday here, but he's 24 years old already. He should have his grown man strength at this point. And it doesn't mean you can't get a little stronger when you're around an NFL weight room and when you're around non college players to force you to sharpen your weight against your strength against them. But he should be, I would think, benefiting from that. I'm seeing a situational pass rusher only in terms of what we did. He again is going to have a hard time finding that same spot on the efficient frontier to play on early downs. I think we're a couple of years away from that. In his case, I hate to stretch out somebody's development goals so long in this case, but he pretty much looks like a pure situational pass rusher. I actually think he's going to have, with Clowney on the roster, is going to have some difficulty getting activations on game day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's see. You brought up Tavius. Let me bring up one more, and then we'll move on from this group as well. Malik Ham, we have to talk about because he's been one of the most exciting Ravens during the early part of this preseason. He's getting a lot of snaps, and he made some plays again in this game. He had a nice cleanup on Robinson for RM2. He had a bull of the right tackle that flushed Howell for a run on 2nd and 17. That should have been good news. It didn't end up being because I think they got the first down on the next play anyway, but he gave up an 8-yard run there. Actually, no, screw that. There was a defensive hold that washed that play out. So they ended up getting a first down on that play. And then he got the forced fumble, which was really nice. And it's just good to see second man to the ball skills in play there. I don't want to harp too much on that. All players should be able to do it, but there really are, it's just not an everyman thing. There are some players who just naturally are always going after the football and other players who don't think to do it. Will Anderson had one fumble forced in 34 career sacks. Something's wrong about the way he's thinking that led to that thing. It wasn't a matter of just he got really unlucky.
Yeah. Hmm.
Last thing about Ham, though, and this is the thing I was really excited about. So I didn't know how many plays he dropped in the first week, but I went back and I looked, and it was 6 of 25 times that he was asked to drop to coverage. And he's been playing mostly on that Sam side, where strong side means the tight end is on that side. I mean, most people know that, but we're saying every once in a while. And then 5 out of 16 plays this week. So it's up from 24 to 31%. Not an astronomical leap, but there's choices being made there by the defensive coordinator in terms of how to deploy Ham on those plays. And by seeing him drop as often as he has to coverage, it leads me to believe they really are trying to decide, is this guy the Sam linebacker backup we need for Tyus Bowser?
Yeah. They're trying to find a role for him. I mean, some players just have that knack for, getting the ball out, making plays, and he's been that guy all preseason. he keeps making plays here and there. So they're trying to find a potential role for him on the team, and yeah, seeing how he does on dropping back is a potential way for him to help. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that's been brought up during this entire streak is that the Ravens make all these sorts of sacrifices to win the game, and they care and they keep the good players in. They don't do anything. I mean, a lot of that's just crap from people who wouldn't have any idea even how the Ravens would go about that, much less explaining to you, why it'd be true. But in the case of Ham, there are developmental snaps being played here to have Ham drop to coverage. Now, it may be the best choice they have in the game, maybe, but I think more likely it's they're trying to see what he can do in coverage, take him a little bit out of his comfort zone. Sure, he didn't rush the passer a lot in college because none of these guys do. They're always too valuable as pass rushers. And to see the Ravens actually, investing snaps in that, I think is good. And amazingly, despite the fact he's dropped to coverage 11 times, they've never found him. They've never targeted him even during this plays.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk about who would you like to talk about? Maybe a corner next? I don't know if we have that next on the list, but what do you think?
Or you want to go to middle linebackers? Or?
Sure, of course.
Okay. Yeah. So talk about Trent Simpson's first time we saw him this preseason. I think he entered like in the second quarter. There wasn't a whole lot in the second and third quarter when he was playing. Not too many splash plays, not too many tackles or anything. Then in the fourth quarter, it got pretty active for him. He had a nice stop for a 1 yard gain. And then the very next play, he missed a tackle, got a face mask, and guy scored a touchdown.
Basically, a trifecta of bad.
A trifecta of what you don't want to happen. Exactly. Yeah. But then, on next series, he had a nice bull rush of the running back, knocked the running back on his butt, and got a sack, and got the ball out, and the ball squirts, a couple of feet the other direction, and that's a fumble recovery, and that ends the game right there. So it was good to see him, recover from a bad play and make a really nice play as well.
Yeah, I definitely some positive plays. One of the positive plays I had noted for him was that B gap blitz that forced Lucas to pick him up and allowed Moon to get the unblocked S-7. If you want to go look at that play, Q2 129, folks, if you want to see that play and what happened, because it's a pretty nice piece of scheme from McDonald there. And Simpson certainly played the part correctly. Anything else? You mentioned running over Patterson in the backfield. I don't know who Patterson is. I don't know anything about him. I do know who Rodriguez is, who had the fumble, because he was a guy I kind of liked coming out of school. But I don't have any idea who Patterson is. And the fact that he ran him over kind of late in the preseason game, I can't take to mean too much, but it still looked pretty. Still looked really pretty.
Yeah, you want to make those plays, especially on a lesser player. So
now Simpson was a guy with a little bit of coverage chops coming out of school. Not perfect, but he came from a safety background. He should be a guy who is one of the better coverage guys at inside linebacker. You would think, I would expect immediately with a safety background, I'm thinking top 25% of the league, maybe in terms of coverage ability at inside linebacker. Now, not necessarily day one, but it could develop to that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I saw him on the right sideline. Somebody, I will say, made a bad play. So there were two underneath covered guys, and I think it might have been Caillou and him on a roll right. And it was towards the end of the game. It was the 3rd and 11 play, Q4 118. So quarterback is forced to roll right. The entire offense then goes to their plan B rules, where they run to the sideline and try and present targets at multiple levels to them. Okay, or at least they have people who do that. And both Simpson and I think it was Kelly rushed up to cover the underneath route and let the tight end Hodges get behind them. Lucien was late getting over as well in terms of being there. Very fortunately, there was enough pressure that Fromm overthrew that pass, because that would have put a dagger in the streak right at that point.
Right. Yeah.
how much are you bothered by that? I don't even know whose responsibility, because it kind of seems like Simpson should have underneath responsibility, if anything, there, and that was probably Kelly's mistake.
Yeah, you would guess that it was probably Simpson that had the up coverage, and Kelly was supposed to be behind him, but it's hard to figure out. Yeah, without knowing the play call, it's hard to figure out whose responsibility that is for sure. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, interesting game from Simpson. I mean, I think we've seen enough flashes athletically. How comfortable would you be with him being on the field in 2023?
Um, I, I like his athleticism, and he seems to be a good guy that can blitz the quarterback well. So if you can get him in situations where he can shoot gaps and get inside to disrupt run plays, or put pressure on the quarterback, I think that that's a potential where if you have to do something with Queen, if you have to potentially trade him or he
Mm-hmm.
gets hurt, um, that's I think he's a reasonable option, and it can free you up to do other things with the defense, as far as going into more dime or doing something like that. But yeah, yeah.
Yep.
It-
One of the things been talked about is there a role for Simpson on third down being like a second Patrick Queen somehow? And that's where I'm really having trouble envisioning that sort of a role. I think it's him or Queen, because they have too much in the way of overlapping
there's yeah, yeah.
skill set.
Yeah, this overlapping skill set right there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's either Queen or Simpson, and yeah. Mhm.
So anyway, we'll see how that plays out, but in all likelihood, Queen will find a new home after the season. One of many Ravens. It's really a nightmare to think how many they're going to lose all at once after this year, with Kevin Zeitler and OBJ and Queen and a whole bunch of other people, Dobbins likely all leaving. It's too many players even to take advantage of the compensatory draft pick formula the way the Ravens would normally hope to do it. They won't have a lot of money to sign people, even losing all those players. And maybe they can sign somebody somehow, but I think they're going to look for every single transaction is going to be looked at very tightly, given just how poor the Ravens cap situation is over the next few years relative to every other team in the National Football League.
Yeah, they're going to be. I'm sure they're going to be looking to ways to pick up draft picks. They'll trade down in the draft, trade players.
Mhm.
You know, get somewhere between 10 and 12 draft picks this year coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. So any compensatory picks don't come until 2025. They won't be 24 picks. So the Ravens won't benefit from that right away. And they would actually, they might, I guess it's always possible they could trade some players at mid-season who were in their final years if they've decided this season isn't working out. We don't want to think that way. And yet there's always a possibility that might happen. And, a player like Dobbins or like Queen or others, Zeitler even, might be traded to some team that has a great need.
Right. Yeah. And, also potential, Cleveland getting traded.
Mm-hmm.
He played. I think he played a decent amount at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
These two preseason games, probably showing him he could be a guard tackle combo or something like that. That might be, you could get a third, fourth. Well, maybe not. I'm being a little optimistic with the third, but maybe a fourth or fifth round pick for Cleveland or something like that as well.
Yeah, I think that might be a little optimistic too, but we don't have to nitpick on that going down. I like the guy. I mean, I think there's still potentially value for the Ravens to harvest if they keep him around and continue to coach him. There is a real problem in terms of roster space for the Ravens on offensive line, because they're a fairly deep group, but more importantly than that, they've stayed healthy so far. So, part of it is we don't have any idea, because they're not allowing Ronnie Stanley basically to walk anywhere, because he has to be wheeled around in a cart or something because he can't play a competitive snap. I don't mean to overdo that, but it is really something that Ronnie Stanley's been held out of. He may have been held out of every.
Film Study is brought to you by Factor. With the busy fall season just around the corner, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for those jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy. Then get back to crushing your goals. Refresh your healthy habits without missing a beat. And with Factor, you can rest assured you're making a sustainable choice. We offset 100% of our delivery emissions, source 100% renewable electricity for our production sites and offices, and feature sustainably sourced seafood in all of our meals. This August, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door and ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/ravens50 and use code ravens50 to get that 50% off. That's code ravens50 at factormeals.com/ravens50 to get 50% off.
Single padded practice so far, but he didn't play in either of the joint practices, and he hasn't played in either of the games. And I believe he's had vet days. Well, he had a ton of vet days, first of all, overall, but I believe he's had vet days on all the padded practices as well.
Yeah, not taking any chances, but yeah. I get it. Yeah, but I will say the health of the offensive line so far. I mean, that's a good problem to have right there.
Oh yeah,
hopefully
big
that
time.
continues. Yeah. I think they have a real good offensive line if they can stay healthy.
Yeah, and you know what? That's most teams. If you can play your starting five and they can live the whole year, be healthy the entire year, play every snap, you're gonna have one hell of a football team. You're gonna have one hell of an offensive line. And I would say in the case of most teams, and you really got to get down to the bottom feeders who don't have anybody they can even play at quarterback. If you could ensure that their team is going to be healthy for the entire season, that team is going to compete for a Super Bowl, because that so much of the NFL is driven by health right now, and it's nobody gets away unscathed by health for a full season. So 2 years ago's Detroit Lions probably would have, been a very competitive NFL team, playoff team anyway, if they'd been healthy the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we have anybody else we want to talk about at inside linebacker? Maybe Josh Ross?
Yeah. He had a nice tackle on a to stop the running backs short on a 3rd and 6 play. He also had the rough play. He gave up the touchdown to Gibson in coverage. Couldn't get through that rub route that they were running, and gave up the touchdown. He's he's a solid contributor. There's not many splash plays from him, but he's doing his job, and there's some value in being solid but unspectacular sometimes.
What we have not seen as much this year from him, you mentioned getting knocked off by the rub. What we haven't seen as much is some really good coverage snaps like we saw last preseason when he was one of the Ravens' best players. I mean, he was truly outstanding and made a bunch of plays. I would love to see more of him in a coverage role in these last couple preseason games. But I'll have to even look what he's given up this preseason in terms of this is something now I need to know in terms of coverage responsibilities. But I saw him getting pushed around a little bit on the run, slip going into the backfield once, and this wasn't his best game, but he still made some plays. And hopefully he's a guy who can help the team. Let's see. So in terms of coverage this year, just looking on PFF here, he was targeted 7 times with 6 receptions in the second game, was not targeted in the first, even though he dropped a coverage 8 times. So 23 coverage snaps in the second game. Looks like they were targeting him a little bit. So 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 124.1 quarterback rating against him in this game. So obviously not the coverage game he can afford to have every week. Hopefully picks it up.
Yeah.
All right. We ready to move on?
Yeah, you want to go to
Let's
defensive backs? Yeah,
Sure. Who would you like to talk about?
yeah, yeah. Well, I just also wanted to. I saw this was an interesting stat here. So, the Commanders completed passes to 16 different receivers
Yep.
in the game. Ravens had 16 total receptions in the game. So,
When we notice that is we're putting down the notes for the players, and then we have to read. This is like a so stupid I can't even say that we have to do this, but the notes are taken in shorthand, including the player numbers, and
mhm,
so we kept going back and having to retranslate these player numbers into names like T.E. Hodges or T.E. Turner or whatever it might be to do these notes that show up in my article. And I notice it's just a new name every time. It's just all the way through the game. They still, they're in the fourth quarter
yeah.
late and they still have a Tremaine to pull out on us. He's getting a reception. So, and
Right,
Allen,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, it was
yeah,
a lot of weapons, and you could see how those cornerbacks would get tired.
right, exactly. Yeah, they're all with fresh legs, and we're playing the same guys the whole game. Yeah, yeah. But I'll start with Kevon Seymour. Um, didn't play that much, but he had a really nice play on 3rd and 9. 3rd and 9, it was a deep pass, and he did a really good job of getting his head around to knock it down and break up the ball. If he doesn't get his head around, that's a 30-yard pass
PI.
interference.
Yep.
But yeah, but he got his head around and incomplete pass and gets him off the field for a punt. So that was a really nice play.
Yeah, I really like that. He was in coverage of Turner on that 16-yard conversion on 3rd and 15. To me, the
Hmm.
ball was just thrown too perfectly. The amount of time that he had, it was 4+
Hmm.
seconds to throw. This goes for a lot of the defensive backs with the pass rush giving up, so much ample time and space. And it's not even just that, because ample time and space for me is a 3-second pocket. And
Hmm.
for a lot of other groups, PFF is most notably, it's a 2.5-second pocket. But for a
Hmm.
3-second pocket is still not as bad as a 4 or 5-second pocket. It's like
Hmm.
exponentially worse to give up a pocket
Hmm.
for a play of that long. And the Ravens had a bunch of 4s and 5s in this game where they
Right.
just could not get home even in that time.
Yeah. And I mean, when you give that much time and you allow the quarterback to step into his throw and not,
Oh yeah.
you know, you're asking for trouble every time. So yeah.
That's it. By the
Mm-hmm.
way, that's the key aspect of ample time and space is it's not just the time, it's the space to step into that throw in a 30-degree
Mm-hmm.
unobstructed arc either direction. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a great point there. I thought Seymour played good. 23 snaps for him and Stevens. They looked like they're getting wrapped, and I think we talked about it in the first show a little bit that these are the guys they're depending on maybe to start the season as cornerbacks 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, and even as the
I'm
season goes
hoping.
on, to be on the totem
Yeah.
pole.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not 1 and 2. Hopefully it's 2 and 3. Yeah. At least Yasin or Darby or both can be ready week 1. But yeah,
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 and then you still wouldn't have
it's
him in the
a good
slot because
start.
Ardarius, you would give the slot job, right?
Yes, yeah, I'd like to see Ardarius in there. Yeah. Hmm.
All right.
Your turn.
I guess we've hit on Stevens. How about we talk about Ardarius next? Because 2 very nice games in a row here. He is really playing it up. He was simply outstanding in this one. It made 3
Yeah.
separate passes defense. The last pass defense he had, where he's on the ground and he
Yes.
slapped the ball free right hand.
Wow. Yeah. At the last second, that was an incredible. Yeah. Not class breakup. I mean,
Yeah.
he was parallel to the ground, and he manages to just get his fingers just on that ball just enough to knock it out. That was a heck of a play and heck of an effort play because yeah, yeah.
And then
But yeah,
after that, he still got up, even though he might have been hurt,
yeah,
or I guess hopefully we've got good news on that. And he ran after the receiver and tackled him.
and tackle him just to make sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he didn't blow the whistle. Yeah, yeah. It was a good heads up play, even though he was hurt. Yeah, that was a heck of a play right there. It
Yeah.
really was. Yeah, but yeah,
I,
he had a really good game. Two pass breakups in the end zone,
mhm.
and yeah, he played well.
Had a nice. Okay, here's in addition to the pass breakups were terrific. He missed a sack, which was unfortunate, but second consecutive week he's missed a tackle on a sack. But the play which kind of drew my eye a little bit, Q2 155, when Antonio Gibson scored his touchdown. And so they scored those 2 consecutive touchdowns at the end of the half to take a 17-14 lead, I think, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And on Gibson's touchdown, I think the play had already been, signaled for a touchdown. And all of a sudden, the right tackle Scott came in and just demolished Washington from behind. Cheap shot is and this is a guy who's already had problems with injury and this. And what I thought was really great, and it gives me the good feeling about this guy as a complete warrior, he got up, he went right after a man who outweighs him by probably 125 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. I was glad he didn't get ejected because it almost looked like he might have thrown a punch, but he went right back at him. So that was, you like that feistiness.
Yeah. It's kind of like watching Ryan Jensen go protect Joe Flacco by taking the head off. Was it Milano or somebody who was whoever the inside linebacker there was for the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, great game for him. To my way, I mean, it's almost a last man standing at this situation. But if you look at what's happened, Millett's been out for a large portion of camp, and I don't see him playing the slot when he gets back without a live fire and real trust building in practice. And I don't think he possibly can get there at this point, based on where he is. You have Stevens drafted for outside corner duty, where I thought that was a reasonable place to keep him anyway. But yes, he's drafted back to his position of greatest value. You have, of course, the injury to Pepe, which is going to keep him out at least for a while. Probably will necessitate the use of one handshake deal if they want to get him onto the roster, by the way. So they will have to utilize one of their, not only one of their designated to return spots, you have 8 of those, but one of their like 54th through 57th magical mystery spots that they have from the handshake deals. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and you're left with Ardarius Washington, who might have been the most reasonable choice originally, but was a forgotten man at camp. I mean, he wasn't getting many reps at all. He's now the obvious choice at slot corner.
Yeah. He's really played well, and he's played his way up. That's, sometimes it's injuries that, allow you to get your opportunity, and he's taken advantage of it. So good for him to do that.
All right. Outstanding. Who's your next guy?
So we can talk about Caillou Blue Kelly. He's unfortunately, he's just not ready to play meaningful snaps yet. First half was really rough for him. He had the holding penalty on a 2nd 17 to give them a first down. Dotson gets open by 5 yards and gets a 17-yard play against them. He gives up a 20-yard play down the sideline on an extended play, and he also gave up the touchdown pass to De'Ami Brown, who made a really nice play to get that touchdown. But he really struggled in that first half. Second half was a little bit better, but not, still not up to task. But he did make a really nice tackle on that 2-point conversion to keep them out of the end zone, and take something positive away from a poor game. That's that's what you got right there.
Hey, that's fair enough. That throw, the failure on that play is largely the quarterback's fault. If he leads the receiver on that play instead of throwing the ball behind him, then Arma's turned upfield, and there ain't no way in hell that Kelly is going to stop him with his weight turned properly. But the ball was a little bit behind him, and that obviously made it more difficult. It's kind of retracking a ball carrier with a missed tackle. That was really what made the play for Kelly. But terrific job still taking him down. I thought the same of Ardarius Washington on one of the other third down stops where he left the player short by a yard. Very similar in terms of got helped a little bit by where the ball was thrown and not allowing the receiver to get the right turn up field that he would have liked to have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you on the Kelly situation. I think I have one other, maybe it's two other issues, and maybe it's one. But Kelly is getting extremely lost at the point of break. So it seems like one of the things that I wasn't really down on him in the draft for was that I thought he had a pretty good mirror at the top of the route. And I'm just not seeing that right now at the pro level. It's too easy for pro receivers to decelerate, for him to not notice it and then get lost on any kind of comeback or dig or whatever it might be that would bring him back towards the line of scrimmage. There's one other problem, and then I kind of want to give you a chance to respond to both of these, is that it almost seemed like on some of these plays where it was taking 4 and 5 seconds that Kelly was, I don't want to say giving up on the play, but it's almost like he was anticipating the play being over and was not continuing at high motor effort.
Yeah, I don't know if it's effort or you see him out there and he's just lost out there. I think he's wide-eyed. There was that one play. I think he got a holding penalty or something, and he just panicked because and there was really no need to, and he panicked and he held the receiver on the play. He's not playing with any confidence, I don't think, and that lack of confidence is making him think and making him being a tick slower than what he could actually play if he was playing more, in a more natural state.
How do you deal with his roster spot?
Those pesky hangnails can last 6 weeks and, put you on IR. So I think that's where he might be.
Is he a player you use one of your spots from 54 to 57 on to keep available for later in the season and hope he develops? Can't develop while you've got him on IR, by the way, because he has to wait until I think 3 weeks before he gets activated again to start practicing, if I recall the rules correctly. So if he's on IR, the issue is he loses the season developmentally. If he goes to the practice squad, you probably lose him entirely if somebody else takes a chance on him.
Right.
Now,
yeah.
I actually think the chance, if you put him on the practice squad right now, it's not a particularly high chance that you lose him because of how poorly he's played this preseason. So there'll be 6 teams out there who said, you know what, that Caillou Blue Kelly was somebody I really liked. And those Ravens, they cut him. But they're also going to say those Ravens, they cut him and they have nobody at cornerback. And those Ravens, it's got to be an exacta to basically, somebody has to figure out that Kelly is the guy they want and that they can fix him because they liked him so much in the draft that they really want to take a chance on him. And then when they do take him, he goes to their active roster. Now it could be that the Ravens try and put him in the practice squad and Kelly says, let me see what other practice squad offers there are.
Right.
So that could happen, but
yeah. I mean, it's pretty rare usually for the Ravens to cut any draft pick in their rookie year. I don't know how many times how often it's happened, but I'd have to guess it's probably one hand that they've ever cut a rookie in their first year. So,
you're talking about now a 5th round pick or any round pick, because they've definitely got some rookies in their rookie year. We go back.
Yeah, like 5th round or higher. Like 6th and 7th are those are kind of 50-50 shots, but 5th round picks or anything higher than that.
Okay, and I couldn't tell you about these guys. I know who's not playing in the NFL anymore, but I think that Daylon Mack, I believe, never played on the team. Jaleel Scott did. I can't remember if Jordan Lasley ever played on the team. People like Nico Siragusa got injured for a whole year. You're not talking about them. But there have been a few. Snacks Myers was a 5th round pick. So that was a guy they really liked at one time. Chris Barnes, I think, was also like a 5th round pick, and they ended up cutting him too. So it has happened. I think they're in a difficult position with Kelly. I mean, they really have to decide: do we just cut this guy, or do we try and put him on IR and hope we can get him fixed? They could put him on a season-ending IR. That would be another possibility. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of money. It's not a lot of money, but it's an investment to get that player into year 2, and clock is running as it happens. So it's a very tough decision in terms of what might be the best call with him.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but yeah, hopefully we don't see him on the field this year for any reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to get to Tay Hayes, but I think we probably got to rip off the band here and talk a little bit about Corey Mayfield. He was a guy who had looked pretty good, by the way, in camp. Had on the 9 interception day, he had 2 of them. And there were some flotation devices that were being thrown up, but Mayfield had been in position to make 2 of those plays. I wouldn't say he's looked terrible in terms of really getting beaten consistently in camp. And honestly, got a pretty high starting position in this game to be the second on with Kelly after the initial guys came off. So he was in the game ahead of Tay Hayes in terms of when they brought him in. They stayed in the rest of the game at corner, and he couldn't have been much worse. It couldn't have gone much worse for him. Had a huge DPI, passes given up. He had 3 penalties in the game, right? That was the total.
Penalties. Yeah, he had a legal contact. He got the personal foul on the cheap shot with our Darius. He got the other personal foul, and he had the PI in the 2-minute drill.
Yeah. So obviously that was one.
That's the worst thing. Yeah, that's the worst thing you could do for an undrafted guy like that. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's unfortunate, but one of the things I was talking about at the beginning of camp was how the hell are the Ravens going to sort through all of this talent that you don't know whether it's 3, 4, 5 on the roster to find who might be good. And that's when they had Trayvon Mullen, and they probably had 8 or 9 names that they're starting with, and they're literally have gone through almost every single one of them.
Mm-hmm. It's disappointing. It's really concerning to go have this many injuries, go through the position this early.
Do you keep Mayfield around for this Saturday game to get him some snaps, see if anything can work out for him? You certainly hope he doesn't get injured in a game like this, but you hope nobody gets injured. It's a risk you take with anybody who's out there, but do you keep him around? Give him the chance for somebody else to claim him, give him a chance to play a little better, see if maybe he reverses his fortunes and is somebody you want on the practice squad?
Boy, it's tough. Yeah, I think you probably keep him on the roster and play him, and just hope he doesn't get hurt, or probably at some point maybe you take him off the field altogether because he's getting hurt and having to pay any kind of settlement to him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, tough decision. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've talked just about all the positions, but how about we need to talk about Tay Hayes because he had a great game.
Yeah. Like he had the diving interception at the against Brissett, and really nice really nice, diving and holding on to the ball, and was good in coverage. They didn't attack him very much at all, and he was that quiet player right there.
I think we might have mentioned in the first show, the only other time he was targeted besides the interception, which is really a question as to whether he was targeted or not, because the ball, went past, was behind the receiver, and he was actually in the back end of a zone coverage and came up and made that play. Nice loose bracket there, reading the quarterback. found the football, all the nice things you want to see when you're playing zone defense. He's really deriving the benefit from it. But the other plan they played is to a running back, Williams, and he took him down for a loss of 1. So 2 throws, 1 interception, 1 tackle for loss is pretty much the cycle.
Great game.
Yeah.
Yeah. All we need is a touchdown in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's all they needed. There's another nice play made on the final drive with about 40 seconds left. He had that step-for-step coverage of Tinsley down the right sideline. It's about a 30-yard throw. He was right there with him, and the ball was overthrown. Yeah, I think a lot of fans maybe don't understand that or maybe think that the cornerback didn't do anything on that play because the ball was overthrown. No, there's a chicken egg relationship there. The quarterback knows where that corner is. He's trying to avoid an interception at all costs. So he wants to throw the ball to a spot where only his guy could possibly get it, which tends to lead to a much higher percentage of overthrows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. We've gone through all the cornerbacks. How about any safeties in this game? I don't think we have to talk about Stone or Worley just in the interest of time. Worley, a great game last week. Early out this week. Stone, same thing. They seem to be protecting 2 guys who I believe now it's pretty clear they want Worley on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. After that game, and I think he, provides plenty of depth at safety and can make some plays, and that's what you want to see. Yep.
Would he be also a guy on an emergency basis, at least, that you could put back at outside corner if you had to?
If you had to, but yeah, that's an emergency big time. So we don't want to see him there. We want to see him at safety.
Yeah, even though the last time he played outside corner, he played pretty well in that Week 18 game against Cincinnati. That's fair to say. And I think he was targeted 10 times for 52 yards in that game, if I recall correctly. So it's a really low yards per target number. It's not always going to work out that well, but that was a nice situation for him. So it was good to see. I just think he's proven himself in this preseason, certainly not to be a great tackler because he's missed some tackles, including one of a sack that he ended up getting a sack anyway. But what he's done more than anything to me is identify where he needs to be on the football field, which is exactly what a safety's responsibility is. Read that quarterback, figure out where the ball is going, and get there. And he just did that over and over again in that first game.
Yeah. It's exciting to see. Yeah. Solid. You need those solid veterans sometimes. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the other 2 guys here, because Stone, there's no doubt about his position on this roster and the backup free safety that he is. But how about Houston Carson and Jeremy Lucien? And they finished the game. Lucien was playing a lot of free safety, a lot of single high left up top. Houston Carson was doing a little more floating around the field, and Lucien did too. Lucien came up the line of scrimmage. He blitzed several times in the last few plays, including a quarterback hit. But talk a little bit about what you'd like to see from these guys, who I think each of them is going to get a pretty significant amount of play in that third game, the next game.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lucien, he led the team in tackles, and he had a nice pass breakup in the fourth quarter. I think you're probably going to give these guys an opportunity to fight for that last safety position or cornerback position on the roster, or be one of your top practice squad guys. Here's a question for you that I've been kind of thinking about. All the position flexibility that Hamilton and Washington and even Worley bring, do you think that helps their chances or hurts their chances that so many guys can kind of move from safety to corner?
Okay, now it's an interesting question. I think the Ravens, first of all, it wouldn't be the first thing they'd value because of the flexibility of Hamilton. And let's say the flexibility of Hamilton or Darius, because they're roster locks. Both of them are roster locks. So once you have those 2 guys on the roster, does the third guy's versatility really count as much as it would if he were the most versatile defensive back on the roster? I think the answer is clearly no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if on the other hand, you're trying to say, do the Ravens generally value Versatility, absolutely. I think we've seen that with any number of players. I think, you look at the special teams guys who've lasted for seemingly decades with the team, and Albert McClellan, Anthony Levine come to mind as two guys. McClellan could play almost anywhere you needed him on defense. He started a game at defensive end for the Ravens at one point when Suggs was out. He played outside linebacker. He played inside linebacker. And he could even be on the field on third down and not kill you. But then he was an incredible kick coverage machine. So Rosberg spoke with him in the highest terms when he was here. So they valued him. Obviously, Anthony Levine, the special teams captain, brilliant on the field at figuring out what the opposing team is trying to do as the play is going off and being able to put something into action. They've had other players, LJ Fort and whatnot, to meet that. But the Ravens value versatile defenders who Levine absolutely was in terms of safety. He could play any of the three spots. He played slot corner, and in emergencies, and it was probably even worse than a Daryl Worley emergency, he actually played outside corner for the Ravens. They really value that. I mean, I think that, you want to have as many of those guys as possible, and it may not be for this year that versatility is necessarily valuable. So Daryl Worley, he's an 8th-year player. I don't know how much longer he's going to be in the league. But a player who's in an early year and has that versatility, like a Stevens or trying to think of another player who might be, it might be Jeremy Lucien, because he's a first-year player and he looks like he really wants to play safety right now. He sounds like he really wants to play safety. Seems like his mind works like he wants to play safety, but his experience is all at corner. And I think the Ravens could find value in that. But I guess to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think they value the service time component more in terms of understanding what the option value is for that player.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah.
All right. Anything to say about Carson Houston or Lucien in terms of their play in this game, or that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. Houston Carson had the nice fumble recovery, and he played solid as well. So yeah, it'll be an interesting fight between him and Lucien to see, who maybe makes this roster, and or who maybe is on the practice squad. So
yeah, if you only have one practice squad spot, you definitely, if you hold on to a player like Houston Carson, I got to say that correct because I've already messed it up once on the show. If you hold on to Houston Carson, he's a seasoned product that another team is going to know they can bring in. He's a guy with almost 2,000, I think it's 1,815 special team snaps in his NFL career and 1,000 on defense. And those guys who can do both of those, they don't grow on trees. You have value if you're picking up a guy like that. So I think he'd be taken more than likely. In a case like Lucien, if he's more a developmental project, you really want to take up a roster spot with him. If you're another team, such that the Ravens have to worry about carrying him on the practice squad, I think the answer might be no. And Jeremy made the good point to me today that if he goes to the practice squad, what he knows it'll do for him is to be able to develop for a year as a safety, a position that's completely new to him over the last several weeks. So I thought that was a very mature response to that. And it could very well be the way it ends up is that he ends up on the practice squad and gets a lot of practice reps this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
All righty. I guess, I know we want to do MVPs. Do you have a 3-1 MVP list ready to go? If you didn't prepare
sure.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you go ahead. You're the guest. Who's your number 3 guy? Name him first.
I had Jeremiah Moon. He had the sack, and again he had that big block on the kick return, and that's what you want to see. He's making an impact with the sack. He also had another pressure. Thought he was one that stood out a little bit on the defense.
That's a great point. And I included some guys who didn't have as good a game as him, but he definitely, as an honorable mention, he definitely deserves honorable mention for me. I didn't have him in my top 3, but I understand that's a really good pick. My number 3 guy, Travis Jones. We talked about him extensively at the beginning of this episode, but I'm just so excited for what the season could bring and how McDonald really has a chess piece with him as well as he does with Hamilton, that he can really alter the scheme he wants to play And that's very much not typically determined by the results of a preseason game. Very little is determined about scheme. You don't ever really show it, other than, you might show some pass rush differences, but you're playing packages that are very basic. And in the case of Travis Jones, I think, we've got that 1-3 possibility is very real. And I think just finding him ways to manufacture single, one-on-one opportunities for him is going to be a fun thing for McDonald to plan each week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He was actually my number one because I thought he was just so disruptive in that first half against the first team. He, he even had the tip pass that ended up getting caught, but drawing a holding penalty, it's the second best thing a defensive lineman could do other than getting a sack. And him getting a sack, he was pretty dominant that first half. So that was my number one.
Aren't you kind of annoyed by this? As an ex-defensive lineman, I'm guessing I know the answer to this question, but aren't you kind of annoyed by this when they tell you who the offensive lineman is who did the hold, but they don't tell you who the defender is who generated it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's always, one of those things. On the flip side, like Torrey Smith was always really great at drawing defensive DPIs all the time, and he should almost get credited for all the yards that he generated on those penalties.
It didn't show up in the statistics, but people certainly credited him with that. In fact, what they often said is all Flacco knows how to do. All Flacco knows how to do is throw up a ball and hope the Ravens get their typical number of pass interference calls. Has nothing to do with Torrey Smith being faster than all defensive backs in the league and all the ankle biting that they would do to try and slow him down.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
We're up to your number two guy.
I had Ardarius Washington. It was tight between him and Travis, but Ardarius was number two. You see him developing. I think he's a really good slot option. Pass breakups, good tackles, just all around really good play. For the entire game. So. Yeah.
And Ardarius is my number one. Outstanding game, and the things he did in this game so secured his position on the roster. I think, and a couple decisions were made in this game about who's ahead of who, and one was on the offensive line, where I think the decision is now made absolutely without question at left guard. And I'm going to get into that a little more on the offensive show. But with regard to the to the slot corner position, he's not only last man standing, he's best man standing of the group. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's any question. If Pepe had been active, the question they should be asking now is, how do we let Pepe down easily and try and figure out how he fits on the roster as a backup slot, or if he's got to play some safety or whatever the other component of that might be, because Ardarius just played at a higher level this preseason than we've seen from Pepe before.
Right. Yeah. Totally agree.
Okay, so we got one left. Ardarius is my number one, so my number two is the only one that's left, and that's Tay Hayes, who had not tested often, as you mentioned. They were going after. They went after a lot of people, including Lucien, and a couple of consecutive 3-by-1s where they put a tight end on the right side and 3 wide receivers on the left side to get all the cornerbacks on that side of the field. Mm-hmm. And so they tried to go after him with Hodges. But I thought that Tay Hayes, they didn't want any part of him in this game. And that says a lot for a guy the Ravens just picked up off waivers. So hopefully this is another case where it's an Orioles-like Orioles. Sorry, let me be clear about that. A situation where they're picking up a value proposition off waivers from another team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was in my honorable mention. So yeah. Very nice interception. Yep.
All right. Well, Brandon, thanks for taking all this time to talk football with me. I always love chopping it up with you, and your experience and your background are always a pleasure to dissect how you think about things. And I do always really appreciate that. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Yeah. You can catch me on Twitter at Brandon Croxton 5, and love to talk football. I'll be there that first weekend against the Texans. So, yep.
All right. Fantastic. Other folks out there, I want to meet you if you want to do a film study short. So hit me up with a DM on Twitter with your kernel of an idea of the show. It doesn't have to be fully developed, by the way. Don't feel like you have to be the smartest guy in the room, have it completely figured out before you come to me about a show idea. It could be a half-baked idea, and we'll toss it back and forth a little bit and see if there's a show idea in there some way. One of the big problems I have is that people want to either, paint the Mona Lisa or recite the Encyclopedia Britannica on the show with me, and that doesn't really fit in the half-hour format or even the 45-minute format. And I've had to break shows up 4 ways to do that, and sometimes that'll work. But obviously, if you come to me with a real complex idea, we can shave it down, or you can come to me with an idea that's not completely developed, and we can work with it together and try and find out what that show idea is. Anyway, love to hear from you. DM's always open on Twitter. Brandon, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. It's always been fun. Yep.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.